That's for any the lender's information, and you're going to see the creditor's name. Now, it may not be something that you recognize. In your instance, the GE that you thought was Victoria's Secret or H.H. Gray. That's going to be listed there. A partial number, account number. It's not. You're not going to see all of it. What's the date of the last activity? The DLA, and that will be an abbreviation there. So you will have to know what that stands for. When was the account opened? How long has it been in your credit file? What's the payment history for 30, 60, 90 days? If there's not been anything late, then it's going to say 0 in front of those numbers. What's the current balance? If there is any. If there's a current balance of 0, it's going to show that. Is this a joint account? Is this an individual account? Is this also have an authorized user on this account? All that is going to be very plainly stated. What's the current status? Usually stated in writing, pays as agreed. And then the credit limit. Most credit card companies have a limit. But if you see one, when you look at your credit history that does not say what that's high credit, and it could be credit limit, depending on which credit card. If it's not stated, call them up and ask them to give your credit, available credit. Again, what's your capacity? That available credit does affect the score. So if you have a credit balance or a credit available there and have no balance, but it's not showing that you have a credit available, then yes, you want it to be there. Yes.
And we've also noticed, sometimes your creditor, you've got good history with them, and sometimes your creditor offers you a higher limit. That's one thing to keep an eye on too, just like you said, because a lot of times your limit may have been up to $1,000, but they're still showing your original limit of $500. Well, now you owe $600, so it looks like you're over the limit, and the credit report thinks that also. So that's another thing to keep an eye on.
That's a good point. So make sure that then what you thought your credit limit was is actually what's there. The next is, not everybody's aware that there are other types of reports that are out there that might affect certain types of things. Check systems. Telecheck is one that I think we're most familiar with. There is reports out there that employers or creditors have access to, that they're able to see. Maybe you don't have credit history, but you have a checking account, and to see how you handle that checking account is one way to another way to see how you handle money. Of course, if you had lots of return checks, you're going to have that information there as well. There's a national tenant network. Now, this is basically on the west coast, but it is spreading across the country. That renters are being reported to this national tenant network, and especially if someone's ever been evicted because of not paying their rent. On the next slide, which is the next to the last slide, are contacts for all three agencies. Their actual mailing address, their toll-free number, as well as their website. And the last one on the list is the annual credit report service. And if you don't feel comfortable in accessing your information online for whatever reason, you can call them on the phone. You will have to go through the same identifying information as you would if you were online. Because anybody could call up and say, well, I'm Barbara Pace, and okay, what's your social security number? What's your birth date? And they're not going to stop there. They will ask financial related questions. When I pulled my credit report, this is April, I think February. The fourth question was, your mortgage payment falls within this payment range. And one of the selections was none of the above. because as I told you, I don't have a mortgage payment. It's been paid off, and long enough for that to be in the credit file, because it was in July. Well, you think, well, somebody could choose none of the above if they were trying to pose as me, but something is going to catch, because then they do ask other questions. If you said, okay, I do have a mortgage payment that falls within this range, then the next question would have been, who do you pay that to? Yes?
I just did one last night, and mine had asked, have you lived with, that had names of different people, and it says, in the past 7 years, have you lived or known any of these people, which I didn't know any of them. So they asked questions that were really, weird.
Right.
Some of them, but yet some pertinent ones too.
Right. So everything has to come together for them to actually take you to the report that you're asking for. Okay. Do I have questions? Yes.
I have a question, and it's, I had gotten a timeshare a couple of years ago, and they didn't pull a credit report, and it's not on my credit report. And,
Do you have any input there?
On like a timeshare condo,
well, it's,
I would have thought that they would have done that.
and they, they said, oh, no, we don't pull a credit report, we pay directly to them, because they're their own bank.
they could do that. We have even seen mortgages that actually do not report.
I still get a mortgage thing, but
Wow.
they don't,
Not real sure, I guess, maybe it's just one of their practices. It's strange.
Yeah, they could be really in dire straits to try to get their timeshare sold, and maybe taking chances, high risk that people will actually pay what they owe. Not really sure why they would do that.
Is there any effective way? I had an experience where several checks were stolen. Someone was practicing the new entrepreneurship, and they decided to cash some of these checks, and Telecheck got reported. The place that cashed the check reported to Telecheck because, well, for whatever reason.
Right.
I had a devil time dealing with Telecheck because, they reported that the checks
Weren't any good.
weren't any good when.
Right. I apologize because there are not those contacts. There are 3 check guarantee companies, Telecheck being one of them, that have numbers that if you do in fact get checks stolen, that you call them and say, my checks were stolen, this is the series of numbers, please do not, guarantee these checks. But after the fact, I would think that calling them, if you will leave me your phone number or contact, I will get you that number.
Okay, that would be good information for anybody that has that experience because,
Right. I mean, you're past it
yeah, but
at this point.
it's a hair-pulling experience.
Yeah.
They won't answer the phone.
Wow.
There
is
is
a-
another piece of information that I'd like to share. It's something that I think is a relatively new phenomenon now, is that when you go for employment, you can not be hired
Right.
because of a low credit score.
Yes, ma'am.
But they need to have a business reason to run a credit check on you. They don't need to, if they're doing it without.
Well, there are actually more employers that are pulling a credit file because they don't want your finances to interfere with your work performance.
Right, so it's a business reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Before you have to leave, I do have a evaluation pack sheet that's in your file. If you could just give me some feedback about that, that would be great. I can let my boss know that it's done
Yeah, I can
at
show
least
that.
a reasonable job. And if you have a question that we weren't able to answer and didn't have time for, just tell me what it is. I'll be glad to contact you with that. With the answer, actually. I won't just call and say, oh, you left me your information.